Well, hi there, folks. Welcome to the program. This is Stinchfield, the podcast. So, Pete Buttigieg, the Secretary of Transportation, Mayor Pete, as he is known, goes on with Margaret Brennan on these horrible Sunday morning shows. And what does he do? He spews the most outrageous climate nonsense you could ever imagine, to the point where Margaret Brennan even laughs at him. Now, Brennan is a huge leftist. She despises common sense. She despises people on the right, yet she laughs at Pete Buttigieg. So this climate hoax that they are perpetrating on us, I'm going to go through some examples of what Pete Buttigieg says and why it's so ridiculous, and then I'm going to bring you the real experts I have found to refute what he says and what the climate zealots say. And this all for you on a very special day, Memorial Day. And I wish everybody out there, I say happy Memorial Day because I think those who gave their life for us to have the freedoms that we do would want us to celebrate on Memorial Day, as long as we're still thinking about their sacrifice, remembering them, and being grateful for that ultimate sacrifice. Of course, the podcast is brought to you by Midas Gold Group, MidasGoldGroup.com, 855-322-GOLD. Now is the time to put your money into precious metals. Midas Gold Group can help you. Let's get the show started.
Uncensored and unapologetic. This is Stinchfield. Here's your host, Grant Stinchfield.
All right, folks. So thank you so much for joining me today. Should we get right off the bat with it? Pete Buttigieg on with Margaret Brennan, Sunday morning talk show. She laughs at him. I want you to watch this, and I want you to watch her snicker at the end of this.
The Federal Highway Administration says only 7 or 8 charging stations have been produced with a $7.5 billion investment that taxpayers made back in 2021. Why isn't that happening more quickly?
So the president's goal is to have 500,000 chargers up by the end of this decade. Now, in order to do a charger, it's more than just plunking a small device into the ground. There's utility work, and this is also really a new category of federal investment. But we've been working with each of the 50 states. Every one of them is getting formula dollars to do this work, engaging them in the first handful. Again, by 2030, 500,000 chargers. And the very first handful of chargers are now already being physically built.
Do you see her? She literally laughs at him. 7 or 8 chargers. Now, I want you guys to do the math there. $7 billion have been spent. There's 7 or 8 chargers. That's $1 billion a charger. I think Tesla can build chargers for a lot less than $1 billion each. Don't you? They're all over the place. This is the problem with government. He says this with a straight face, and yet we know that this is outrageous. This is a waste of taxpayer dollars. And what you see are fewer and fewer people now buying electric vehicles. Ford lost tens of millions of dollars on its electric vehicle program. They're going to shut it down. All of these car makers that have tried to transition over say it isn't going to work. And yet Buttigieg, Team Biden, doubled down on it as the world literally laughs at them. On Face the Nation, I'm surprised she brought up President Trump. But President Trump has been very outspoken about electric vehicles. Now, he has the same view as me. You want to buy an electric vehicle? Fine. Just keep the government out of the way. Stop subsidizing these things. Stop spending taxpayer dollars on these things, because it doesn't make any sense from a financial perspective or a limited government perspective. Let the free markets work. She brings up President Trump's comments and then lets Pete Buttigieg respond. This is pretty good.
Donald Trump repeatedly talks about President Biden's decision to force the industry towards making 56% of car batteries electric by 2032, 13% hybrid. Listen to what he said in New Jersey recently.
Do you notice he's trying to save the electrical vehicle, but not the gas-powered, which is the vehicle that everybody wants. They're going crazy with the electric car, costing us a fortune. We're spending hundreds of billions of dollars subsidizing a car that nobody wants and nobody's ever going to buy.
He's not wrong.
Oh, he's
on
wrong.
The purchasing. He's not. Of the 4 million vehicles purchased, 269,000 electric vehicles were sold in the U.S. market. It's up like 2%.
Every single year, more Americans buy EVs than the year. Well, this is really important.
More quickly.
Every single year, more Americans buy EVs than the year prior.
up 2%. 269,000 electric vehicles bought. I would imagine many of those are government agencies that are buying the electric vehicles. This is not a win for the American people. The American people, by and large, are speaking with their pocketbooks, and they're saying, we don't want electric vehicles. We want regular gas-powered cars. Now, why the auto workers unions would come out and support Joe Biden, I have no idea. The auto workers themselves, I think you're going to see, are not supporting Joe Biden at all. So it gets worse with Brennan here. He again makes all kinds of wild claims about climate. I mean, just the sheer fact that Face the Nation has him on to talk about climate tells you all you need to know about NBC and what they think is important, even though she pushed back on him, which I am impressed with. Hands down, I'll give it to her. She pushed back. Thank you, Margaret Brennan. You're usually such a giant witch with a B, if you know what I mean. But this is Buttigieg again making a wild claim about turbulence. Now, apparently, when you're flying in an airplane, the pilot says, buckle up, we're going to hit some rough air. Well, that's climate change, too. I had no idea.
The reality is the effects of climate change are already upon us in terms of our transportation. We've seen that in the form of everything from heat waves that shouldn't statistically even be possible, threatening to melt the cables of transit systems in the Pacific Northwest, to hurricane seasons becoming more and more extreme, and indications that turbulence is up by about 15%.
Turbulence is up by 15%. So that's climate change. But how do they make these correlations? To me, it's wacky. And I don't think they can prove that somehow this is man-made, which is the ultimate proof, is even if there is cyclical events when it comes to these things, is it man-made? Folks, I'll tell you, this has been going on forever. Flashback to Dan Rather.
Concern about rising temperatures on planet Earth heated up a hearing here in Washington today. For years, scientists have theorized about the dangers of the so-called greenhouse effect, the warming of the Earth's atmosphere due to the burning of coal and oil. And in recent months, as David Culhane reports, research has uncovered facts to support that theory.
Now, remember, it was global warming back then. Now it's not global warming. You can't say that because the temperatures go up, the temperatures go down. In fact, as you'll see in a little bit, more people have died because of cold weather on Earth, not warm or hot weather. That's a fact. Should we just play a little piece of this report from this guy back in the 80s? Let's see.
Many scientists claim that the temperature of the Earth's atmosphere has been rising over the past 100 years, that the great sheets of pack ice in Antarctica are melting at a much more rapid rate than previously. And finally, that the sea level has been rising with increasing swiftness over the past 40 years. If these scientists are correct, about 25% of Florida would be flooded, along with low-lying areas all over the world. Climate changes could produce widespread disruption of agriculture. The American farm belt might be too dry, and the wheat and corn crops would have to move to Canada. Scientists blame the odorless, colorless carbon dioxide gas for these potentially dangerous changes around the planet. It is the greenhouse effect. The gas allows sunlight to filter down and warm the Earth. But like the glass of a greenhouse, the carbon dioxide tends to trap heat so that it cannot rise into space. The scientists maintain that the coal, oil, and gas we've been burning for 100 years have produced more and more carbon dioxide and helped overheat the Earth. Now, some political leaders endorse the demands for more CO2 monitoring stations, like this one in Hawaii. And they share the anger of the scientists at Reagan administration budget cuts at a time when they feel closer to getting definitive answers.
We are not doing the kind of research that we should be doing to determine whether or not these scientists who are so alarmed are correct in their assessment.
And what they find out will affect the lives and fortunes of millions of people, the very survival of cities like this one. David Culhane, CBS News, New York.
The survival of cities like New York. Well, that was what? 40 years ago? I mean, and still, New York hasn't been overrun with floodwaters from the rising oceans. We don't call it greenhouse gas anymore because it's not warming the Earth, but going through cyclical temperatures. I mean, over and over, I could play to you more and more evidence that what they've been predicting for decades is not working. These crazy climate hoaxes are only pushed upon you to try to control your behavior. Are you waking up to this yet? It is all about control. Fake the message, control you, they get what they want. It's nonsensical.